Paul, Mischka, welcome. I wanted to start off by saying, and hopefully I won't be the first person to tell you thank you today. And the reason why I say that is, we've been lucky enough to partner up with United Way through our Build for the Future program, which I'm sure we'll get into and talk more about it. But the reason why I say that is because, for people who don't understand specifically what you do, I'm sure that your everyday is dealing with a lot of sad stories and negativity and stuff like that is difficult, and that's not an easy job, right? And what the reason why I specifically say it is every time that we've had an opportunity to meet up through the breakfast or things like that, you have such a great way of bringing so much positivity and motivation to want to make a change or to inspire more people to do things like we're doing with Build for the Future. And every time that I leave there, I'm always like, okay, what more can I do, right? so thank you for that, because it's not easy, right? So
no, it's not, but we work with people who care.
Yeah, I was thinking. We were talking about that earlier. I said that what keeps me in it is there's so many people who are trying to make that difference, and we have the privilege. I mean, it really is it's inspiring, because we're not always ourselves in our office work as frontline, but we're working with some of the ones who are dealing with those harder stories and those things and challenges. But it's what I think keeps me in it. I mean, in my 18th year, is there's so many people doing such amazing work, and are still so committed and still so trying every day to make a difference. So
we get to see the best of Southeastern New Brunswick every day. And that's government side, corporate, the agencies we fund and work with in other capacities. It's so many individuals who come together who care, because this is our region, this is home, right?
And Moncton area and the greater Moncton, I would say now in the years what's changed, it was always a bit collaborative, but the level of we got to do this together is huge now. And we're seeing that in the work we're doing, and I think so that's gratifying. But you're right, in the face of challenges that are complex, stubborn, that you don't solve them in 2 years, we'll strike a committee and we'll solve some homelessness. There we go. We got her. That part is the discouraging part. I know for our CEO, sometimes she says, has anything changed? It has. Right. People's lives individually have changed. But the challenges are growing. Right. And so I think that's the part that can be daunting. If you're doing it on your own.
And you look outside your window or your car as you're going to work or wherever you choose to work, play, and live, and you see a lot of these things firsthand, right? Yourself personally, and we are the fastest growing city in Canada, which is pretty cool bragging rights. But that does come with
challenges, right?
Growth challenges, exactly. And so, we looked at last year, and what we accomplished together as a community was changing 62,000 lives.
No way.
That's no small feat, and it takes everyone. It's your hours that you gave volunteering at Youth Quest, cooking meals. It's the financing that you donate. It's all of those pieces coming together. And so sometimes it is heavy, sometimes it is where's the change, because you can't visibly see it. It's 62,000 lives.
And I think for those individuals, the lives are changed. So I think what's changed for United Way in the last 20 years, and that's what our CEO was meant to bring us in to do, is we're trying to move the needle not just in improving individual lives. We want it to be that we're moving it at the population level. We want it to be that it doesn't depend where you're born, where you grow up, what school you go to, what area, that there's an opportunity to thrive, for everybody to have that. I mean, that's the mission nationally, they talk about, is they want everybody to have the opportunity to thrive. We tend to work more with the ones who are more vulnerable, because they're the ones that have the most barriers in their place in order to be the best of themselves and to be able to contribute and to do. But really, we want the whole community. It sounds trite sometimes, I find, to say the whole community needs to do better. We want all the community. That's our goal. But it really is. We've said to people, if we don't do it together, we don't do it. It really isn't. And I think that's the strain. We're outpacing needs, but to capacity right now with population. It's exciting. Holy cow! It's putting a strain on everyone. We're at it.
But I always remember, I can't remember who said it first, but they said, rather have the problems of growth than the problems of decline.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And like, oh man. And I think the other piece that's really difficult to measure but is incredibly meaningful is that ripple effect.
Right.
You help one child, you change their family, you change their neighborhood, and you change their future kids and the future direction of that that lineage, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting to think about the future impacts that you may never really know.
Right,
it may not be tangible about the work that you've been doing in community,
Right.
but we'll feel it.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah,
As neighbors.
It must be like, to your point with the changing lives of individuals, it must be also hard sometimes because it's like, then once they're fixed, it's like, I imagine you kind of lose, that's like, okay, that's done, but then there's the other problems of the next individuals that come in, and then you sort of maybe lose sight of, oh wait, I had made a difference with these people, and how are they doing later on? Are you able to see that, like, are you able to come back and see some of those individuals that you fixed? I mean,
I think we see some beautiful examples.
Yeah.
My thought immediately goes to our peer-supported housing program, where we had an individual who was in our program for 10 years.
Okay.
Someone who was facing insecure housing, mental health, substance use, addiction, mental health, and it took this person a while. And when you hear their story, and he's shared it publicly before, so I'll just share a piece. But mom and dad were drug addicts, and when he was 3 months old, he was in the hospital with broken collarbones.
Okay.
And that's how life started for this individual, right? And so things get worse, trauma compounds, and it became self-medication to cope and survive.
Right.
And so he joined our program as an adult, but it took only 10 years, right? Given the childhood he had. I mean, that's just freaking incredible.
Yeah.
And it came full circle because now he's actually part of the program as a key staff member for peer-supported housing. We had so many great examples of seeing those individuals shine and then give back in their own way.
And we work with a lot of partners who are invested in it for the long term.
Right.
Because like when we say, we 1 year captured it as unignorable issues, and what we were trying to do was to help the community understand that, okay, there's this issue, it won't be solved easily or quickly.
Right.
Which also means that we need partners and people who are in it for the long haul, like who are going to be sticking with you. Are you going to be in my corner, right? Yeah. And that sometimes there can be changes of individuals in organizations, but we've got a lot of partners, and it's government as well, and community sector and corporate partners who are like, okay, no, we've got your back over the long time, because sometimes it takes that long to see the change in the trajectory. And we have others too that they talk about. Like one of our partners that you guys have worked with is Youth Impact. And we were doing an evaluation with them and working on stuff, and they were talking about their history, and they said, sometimes we may have an individual in our program, and it wouldn't be seen as success in the first part. They didn't stay in the program past 8 weeks or whatever, but they kept a relationship with them.
Okay.
And so they would once in a while check back with them and just be talking to them about it. And like 4 or 5 years later, this is someone they feel they can turn and talk to and do. So you're right, they've got new people coming in, but that's a relationship that when they're ready, when they're in a position, they know, okay, there's somebody I can do. That's a commitment of that organization to say, we're still here. And I think I can honestly say that's the partners that we're starting to grow deeper and deeper with. We've got some partners now, even in our funding, that we're saying, we're going to fund you over a longer time.
Right.
And part of it is because they're so aligned with the change we're all trying to do.
Right.
We all want to win.
You see the long term of it, right?
And so we've said, okay, let's fund you longer then, because you're right in there. We're in there with you. We're doing this together. We're real partners. But this takes time, right? And I think even this is an occasion sometimes, these kinds of things, for us to to reflect on, because I can tell you now, we tend to like be just sitting down, just trying to keep moving, keep improving, keep doing stuff. And then we have a chance to say, so what have you done? And we start to talk about it, and we're like, oh, okay, there's a lot of impact with this. This hard work of people spending time together, trying to figure out how do we do this together? How do we make a change? Oh, it actually is having an impact. But we're kind of driven to the next day of, all right, next piece, let's go. But and like I say, there's amazing things happening in the Moncton area, right?
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, and I just think about like 2-on-1.
Well, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that 2-on-1 will always be magic for me.
Okay.
Always. So in 2020, this is how I joined the team officially.
Okay.
I like to call it a love affair as a volunteer beforehand, but I joined the team in September of 2020, and we launched 2-on-1 in October in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
And once again, like I got to see the best of New Brunswick. It was so well received. People were connecting me to all kinds of networks and associations. We had a full spread in this magazine that gets sent to every doctor. I was on parenting podcasts. Like it was wild. Like it was so cool. And we became the case study for 2-on-1 in Canada.
Okay.
So every province has 2-on-1.
Okay.
We became
So what's 2-on-1 specifically?
It's the front door to help.
Okay.
It really is.
Okay.
So you can call, you can text, email, live chat, there's a portal, but it's a helpline that connects you to the social, government, and community resources you need in your own neighborhood that you're eligible for. It's available 24/7, and it has access to 150 languages.
No way.
And it's free.
And it's free. It's confidential.
Which people can't believe. When we presented town councils, they're like, so this is free. Like, what's the catch?
What's the catch?
Right?
I still can't believe the 150 languages. Like, it's just amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So anything non-emergency, right? Basically.
Anything non-emergency.
Okay.
And it's helped 132,000 people since October of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, it's powerful.
Yeah.
And it's been, moms who are trying to reorient themselves with job training and employment counseling. We've had seniors with disability call in, and they were tapping into resources that they didn't know that they could access, and then paying for vital home repairs. It's just like these incredible stories of our neighbors who didn't know that help was out there.
Right.
And it's 132,000 people.
No way.
Like, it's magic.
Well, even our United Way Day of Caring, it's still the largest single day of caring in the country.
No way.
Now, we're to qualify. United Way of Toronto has a day of caring department, and they do days of caring and all that. But in terms of one day of 1,000 volunteers doing 100 projects, it's I don't know how more people don't even know about it, because it's just an amazing thing that really, like, just the power of that in the community. One of the things,
visual, it's palpable.
It's visual, and we released a stat around the garden boxes, because that's a big project. People do garden boxes, and that sounds nice. We do garden boxes. But what we're able to estimate is that about 30% of those who are most food security vulnerable are likely benefiting from that. So it's not just, isn't this nice? We're building some garden boxes, and we're going to be able to grow food. It's helping right now, and we know the cost of food and all of that.
The rise in business too.
So a single day has that kind of impact that at least they can access it. That's stuff that blows me away, right? That we should be talking about in our region, right?
Yeah, and also just so special because all of these people that we get to work with get to go see.
The
when we
fruits
say
of their labor, right?
When we say 62,000 lives, like this is it. Like, these are the places. This is the work.
Yeah. So it is. It's lovely.
Well, that's always been something, like I've mentioned it a few times in the meetings that we've had. It's like, it's great doing, and it's super important funding the organizations, but I find individually and even in the collective, it's like that impact that you have when you can see the tangible results, or you can even participate in it. I think that's the most fulfilling part, and also I feel it's the one that you can quantify that impact that you're having on a person or in a situation, and you're like, I helped. Right? Because the funding sometimes, and I'm happy that we partnered up with an organization like you guys.
We are as well.
Us and 9 other businesses, but it's good that we have a good partner that can, when you give the funds, you know that it's being distributed well. Because I think that oftentimes we're like, okay, well, I give $100 to this relief fund and all that. It's like, where's it going?
Right.
And sometimes I know that there's some reports that have come out in recent years where it's like, when you really see how much money goes to the cause, you're like, oh, that's not a lot, right? And we're really happy that we're looking at an organization like you guys that are using the funds to do it, but also are inviting us to opportunities where we can participate.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so important.
Yeah.
These programs wouldn't exist without
No,
financing.
no.
It's a huge piece, right?
Yeah.
That's required.
Especially when you start to do something well, then you want to expand it.
Yeah.
And especially, I think what people are starting to learn too is they were thinking, well, it's nice that people want to, work in these organizations and give back, and that's great. Yeah. No, we need talented, competent people who want to do this for a living.
Absolutely.
When we find people who are great at working with young people and showing them possibilities and expanding their future, you want to keep them. So for them to make a living, we have to make sure that we're giving them, sufficient pay and that. The funding is critical. But I think you're right, is we don't want to just align the funds. We want to align our hearts, right, in the region. We want people to continue to care for and care about one another, because when people get stressed sometimes we can turn inward, and right now there's a lot going on in the world, and I think for us we're saying, but in the midst of that, what we'd like to make sure we do is we continue to care for and about one another, and I think you only get that from getting involved. You're right,
100%.
Right. I think the dollars flow from that. But you also want to know that the dollars are flowing in ways that are impacting the greatest, right? And I think we're good stewards of dollars. We take that very seriously, actually.
We do.
Yeah.
And we also, in the same token, couldn't do our work without volunteers.
Oh my gosh.
No.
We rely on so many incredible volunteers.
Oh, well, like this morning we were bringing people down to see again the seniors meal program that we do, which started off during the pandemic because at the time Meals for Wheels couldn't go in. A lot of people who were doing meal programs too, a lot of volunteers were seniors. We told them to stay home, all of that. And then through that we identified there's a lot of seniors in low income, and it's not even just meals, they weren't getting nutritious meals. Right. And so it started with like about 80 or something, whatever. And now with support from also federal funding, we've expanded now 300 seniors every week are getting 3,000 meals.
No way.
And we have a couple of cooks, but the rest is volunteers who are cutting and preparing it, delivering, and the delivery is just as important because it's the check-in, it's the wellness check. The seniors are like, how are you doing? They wait for the visit. Sometimes the delivery might take a little longer because they want to know.
And they're passionate, right? It's like, to meatball or not to meatball? Do walnuts belong in banana bread, John? Like, we need to get into this plot of this issue. Oh yeah, they care deeply.
They care very deeply.
And we love it. And our volunteers love it.
And that is really so heavily dependent on volunteers, right? Like, just amazing.
Oh, you're laughing. But it's real.
They get very particular.
Really?
Oh yeah.
But like we all do. That's the thing. I think sometimes we think when we're helping others and stuff, we'll just get the quality that we're going to give them. It's like, well, don't we want to give them the best quality?
Absolutely.
Don't we want to? Because that's the care part. That's the, I think.
I know, and food is everything. It's cultural, it's tradition, it's societal.
Social aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying United Way. We have our Don't Care days as well. So so we're thinking we should have a United Way Don't Care day. Somebody phones us, we hang up on you. We just do that. Not today.
We joke every now and then. Today is Mischka's day of not caring.
And we might even have United Way days of swearing. As well.
Yeah.
I'm in for those.
Yeah.
We do swear a lot on this podcast.
Is that right?
Oh, good.
I still remember on one of the days of caring, I was doing a delivery and having to do one of those with the trailers on the back.
Yeah.
And I went in the wrong entrance somewhere, and so I was trying to get back out again. And I have no experience with this, and it's counterintuitive. Because I go, well, I want to go. It's not going the direction I wanted to go. That's when we learned of the day of swearing. I came back to the committee, and I was just like, never again. Never again. So
now and this is like really to help viewers, and it's I'm going to ask the question because I want to make sure that I understand it correctly. Is like, obviously there's a United Way international kind of organization.
United Way worldwide.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's all of the local United Ways?
There's actually United Way Canada.
There's United Way
And
Canada.
then there's the local United Ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does the organization as a whole work on the same kind of mission statement, and then it trickles down, and then you work?
In United Way Canada, it was newer a few years ago that they joined United Way Worldwide because there's so much in common. They had different origins. Like United Way in the States there's United Way, and then they formed branches.
Right.
In Canada, every United Way started as its own individually.
Okay.
And had to learn to become a movement, and that's what they are now. We're a movement.
Yeah.
And we have like a future state and a vision, because if somebody's at a Home Hardware in BC and they're a big supporter of United Way, and you want to come to Moncton, you want to know that are some of the concerns and the care is the same here? Are we going to, and how we do our work is the other piece to it. Do we do that similarly? So we're part of a United Way movement, and that means too we have access to knowledge that is amazing, right?
Resources that we share across the country.
Yeah.
But that local piece is important because
fiercely local.
you need to be experts in your own community because the needs we have here are not the same needs in Victoria.
No.
Right? Could there be similarities? Absolutely. But community changes. The way life changes.
You cross the bridge here at the community changes, you know?
And we're lucky enough, like in Moncton, it's cool because you've even got like the Anglophone and Francophone very, similar in population numbers, in their individual situations. And, you've got people that are in the higher income spectrum, lower income spectrum, and everything in between. And like you said, Moncton continues to grow. So with that growth comes obviously those challenges there. Now, to continue on with the United Way, like, can you describe for someone that would be new to hearing about United Way, what does United Way specifically do?
United Way changes lives.
Simple enough.
And then to do that, well, it is interesting because years ago we were known as fundraisers, which we did very well.
We still do very well.
And we still do very well, and we did those, and we gave those to organizations who were doing good work. But as long as they continued to do good work, that's how it was. But in 2012, the model changed. We became an open organization. And really, over the last 20 years, we've become a community impact organization that changes lives. So we still fund organizations, but we've said, look, here's the areas in particular that we think is going to make this a stronger community. A big piece, like 70% of our funding probably goes to children and youth, because the theory is if you can make the change there, future trajectory better. But then there's still a significant part of how do we move people from poverty to possibility. And it's, part of it is income. We know that. How do you solve poverty? Income. But there's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of stubborn, complex issues around poverty. And so those are the kinds of things that United Way is saying, how can we make a change on that? So we fund organizations to do good work. We have some partners that are even closer. But over the years, we've also, because of our flexibility, been able to step in the gap. That's where we ended up owning 5 and managing a 6 apartment building for people of high acuity, the hardest to house. That's why we started that Seniors Meals program. That's why, 2-on-1 was national and international and broad, but that's why in particular we got into the youth impact movements that we're doing, like U-Turns that you're part of, and a new project that's coming up as well now.
But a lot of our flagship programs are really innovative in the community workspace.
Like which ones?
I would say U-Turns.
U-Turns would be one of our ones.
Peer-supported housing.
And the peer-supported housing, because the peer-supported housing went another evolution, what was called Housing First. Because the Housing First was saying, listen, whatever the issues are, unless we have people housed, we can't deal with addictions and we can't deal with mental health. We can't do.
You can't change your life if you don't have somewhere to live.
But peer-supported housing says, but it's not enough just give them housing because they need to connect, they need to belong. So because even if they were not housed safely, they had a community of sorts. And so you needed that. So the next step of that was saying, we need to be supported by peers, and the ones who are the superintendents in the housing are ones themselves who have lived experience. So that's an innovative piece. U-Turns would be our other flagship one, right? U-Turns, and it started really just with one superintendent in the school saying, help. Like, we can't do this. Not only can we not achieve community outcomes, we can't achieve our educational outcomes on our own, right? And that some of those challenges they've been amplified with both pandemic, but also the increasing population. They just can't keep up. And we've said, they're creaking under the pressure, schools. It's like, can you solve food security for us and mental health? And wouldn't it be nice if teachers could spend some time building a relationship with kids and teaching?
Right.
But how do you do that with class sizes expanding to 29 and 30 and all of that?
Yeah.
So what we said was, but it wasn't just them. Public health said, and the hospital says, well, we can't keep them out of the hospitals on our own.
Right.
And then the police are going, well, we can't keep them out of the court system on their own. And so it was people saying, we can't do this except together. And it started working in 2 schools, 1 school district, and now we're in 3 school districts.
Okay.
Where we're in about 7 or 8 schools. And I would say that work has led, that great work, to us being selected to be the lead agency for what's now called an IYS, Integrated Youth Services. It's a hub that we're hoping to launch. You are recording it, but by end of September, or certainly this fall.
Yeah.
The province announced that they're going to open 6 over the next 2 years, but it's across Canada.
Okay.
And the basic concept is, what if we all get under one roof? So any young person, 12 to 25, if they walk in and they're looking for mental health, or they're looking for maybe a nurse practitioner, or they're looking for, I want to know about stuff about employment. I want to know about how to get into the trades, or I'm just looking for some friendships I want to create, or all these things, we're going to be able to connect them. And part of it is you want to have a lot of those partners in the same roof.
Yeah,
and they're going to be in the building we're in right now.
No way.
And it's downtown.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that happened because of the work of the partners with U-Turns. They looked at that and said,
this is what we need. Right?
This is what we need. And instead of saying, well, let's have one organization create this, let's again rely on all these partners. And so that's exciting.
Yeah.
It's stressful, where there's renovations that were happening. We were doing interviews for people for some positions, and we said, is there bowling upstairs? No, they are literally knocking down walls. Tearing down the walls between us. No, they were, so there's that work that's still just, it's incredible because that takes a lot of trust.
Right.
Because when people don't trust, then they go after the dollars individually. But when they have built up trust, they're like, hey, we can do this together, and maybe you guys, hey, you do this best. Could you do that? I think that's the stuff that probably inspires me the most, is that I mean, it may not be sexy for people, but that level of collaboration is actually what changes lives. And we see it eventually in the individual stories, that we capture and that we hear from our partners. But that's what does it. It's people working together.
And it happens, it's obvious that it has to happen in the collective, right? Because I think when you hear about like just in our experience, how many, what brought us to even partnering up with you guys is that we would often get many requests for many different circumstances, and they're like, okay, there's a lot of issues or a lot of reasons to donate money. And so you can only imagine that when that's coming from a private organization, when it's an organization that's already in the nonprofit looking at just society in general, the same situation applies, right?
Absolutely.
The only way to solve it is to work in the collective.
I think so. Well, I mean, and you think about it, I mean, yes, we're the fastest growing urban population, second year in a row, per capita in Canada. New Brunswick's still smaller than Mississauga. So there's no way to do this separately. Like we had an initiative before we began U-Turns that the government was starting to roll out. They were in Fredericton, and we went to meet with them and said, hey, you're going to come to here, like we're ready to adapt because you're bringing some new resources. And they said, oh, it won't affect your kids. There's no separate group of kids that we're working with. All these kids are all our kids, right? And so I think that's it really is, like as Mischka was saying, like what inspires him, like that's what inspires me, is that level of trust and collaboration. And it's not without frustration, it's not without some good debates, and it's not without some pushing and tugging sometimes, because to make change you got to be able to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Right. Because if we just keep doing things the same way, we don't achieve the same result, right? And so it's when people start to stretch outside and get a bit outside themselves and start to do that. Part of our role, United Way, is to go, it's okay, I know it's uncomfortable. But that's how we're going to get there.
We're getting there.
Like that is how we do it.
Has like in terms of the more recent circumstances that we're facing, especially in Moncton, has there been is it always like the situation of extreme poverty that puts people in disadvantaged situations, or can it be like they're coming from a bad family situation of abuse, or like what are you seeing that's kind of the common thing, or is there just
no, actually you are right in terms of when we first began U-turns, for instance. Absolutely, some of the places where there's more poverty and where there were priority neighborhoods where they're facing multiple obstacles. But right now, like an example, we're talking to a principal today, they're getting calls from parents they've never got calls from because they don't know what to do. Because the level of anxiety has risen, and a lot of that was really compounded by the pandemic. So I would say there's so many families that are saying, how do we do this? What do we do now? So I would say that has changed. And the fastest growing homelessness are youth and seniors. So people's picture is just of, absolutely there are some who experience schizophrenia and substance use issues, but it's not just that. That's the fastest growing homelessness is just the cost of having housing. Right?
And I think it's hard also just to like fathom that there are many people in our community who are working 2 to 3 jobs and it's not enough.
And it's not enough.
It's not adding up. We've just had massive increases in the cost of food, the cost of heat and electricity, rent. When you're hit with a 10% increase in one bill. And you're already paycheck to paycheck,
red line,
right? Or you see your rent increase by 50%. Like 50% is massive, right? Like how do you manage that?
And lives can change dramatically in a moment. Right, like with a health issue, where you seem to be fine and secure. I mean, the average Canadian doesn't have now that net savings to fall back on. So things can change very dramatic. So, and I think that's part of it, is we don't view it as an us-them kind of aspect. It's we really need one another. Now, it's not to pretend that I don't see myself in a privileged position, but absolutely, that's what I meant by we know we need to make sure everybody is doing well. And sometimes, not to, like you say, we're very positive. We build on strengths. But sometimes we look at some stats. Like for one of the stats, for instance, in the province that we were looking at the surveys, is we're pretty much all the same across the province. Like about 41% of young people say they have somebody they look up to and they admire. So we're not doing any worse than anyone else. What I would say is, okay, but we're all sucking at that. Like we all share that. Like we've got to do better at that. There's urgency sometimes around some of these pieces, right? So I mean, that's most youth are not getting enough support and positive relationships. Like that's why you say it's not just the funding. Having like, for example, yourselves and your folks get involved. That makes big difference. That's saying somebody cares about me.
And it's tough. Like we've all obviously been young, and I think that in every youth there is a need for connection, but also there's like not an understanding of how to get it right. And you always start from your family network, and if from there it's not easy to build connection with your parents, maybe they're not there enough and all that, and then maybe you go to school, and school is a difficult environment, right? And everybody doesn't start at the same starting line, or doesn't have the same friends or that stuff there, and I do think that everybody can agree and say that the connection part is the most important part in order to be successful as an individual. And it's important to build that, right? And that's why I get really motivated when we go through those things, and I hear about all the good things that you've done, and I'm like, how can I do more to get and the ones that, the barbecues that we've done and stuff like that, it's like just having that conversation with the kid, I'm sure that he's like it has an impact on him, right? And that's what I feel that people need to see more, at least experience.
It used to happen more naturally too. Now we have to be really intentional about it, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember a youth at Youth Quest, because we had Peach Marketing join us for the very first one, and she was super into art, and she had no idea that you could turn art into marketing or into graphic design. Right. She had no exposure to that. Or when you all went to one of those builds that Acadian Construction was doing with all the little kids. And they were oohing and eyeing, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, because there's an electrician, and there's a builder, and there's a plumber, and there's the engineer, but there's also the architect and the bricklayer, like it's everyone. And they went back to Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and they were like, so what did you think? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I thought I was going to have to do the exact same thing as mom.
Right.
Because they weren't exposed to something else. And and they say you can't be what you can't see.
Right.
But like on like a broad spectrum, right? Not even talking about like things like glass ceilings, but just possibilities and pathways, you know?
And people need to be personally engaged. You know, I think that's we need to encourage, and because sometimes people feel unsafe stepping out of that, you know. Matter of fact, even during pandemic, people got used to not volunteering and not going out, you know. For extroverts, it was wicked hard, you know, to be going towards people and veering away like from them. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
I mean, where I want to just go, hey. But and actually, I think about that engagement, Mischka, about when you were on our marketing committee and U-Turns presented about something, and you were just like, it struck a chord. It was like, what can I do? Right? Right? How do I?
Yeah, so I was a volunteer on the marketing committee. And I was just there to help with like social media strategy, comms planning, that kind of thing. And when I heard about U-Turns, I was like, I need to do more. So we're like, there's so much you can do with youth, so much. But what I ended up doing was going into high schools with one of the strategic coordinators, and we just talked to girls about employability. Because the number of girls that they were working with who were emancipated or who were about to be emancipated, and what that means is you now have to figure out all of life on your own is huge, right? And when you're 15, how do you, I mean, some of us barely do the interview process well today as adults. You know, it's like you don't even know how you got hired. You're so bad at it. And so, but at that age, right? Like how do you? So
we never stop needing connection and belonging. Like the model they say that makes us for good health. Bill Morrison called it. He originally called it the CAR model. Competency, autonomy, and relatedness. But he's said, you know, it really should be the RCA. Because to your point, relatedness is the hinge on which the other two swing. It's you know, it's just without that sense of connectedness and belonging, everything else is less effective. You know, every program we do, whatever, we're humans. We're longing for connection, and it never stops. We never stop needing it as adults when we go into new workplaces, when we go to new communities. But in those, there's certain periods of our lives where we're more vulnerable. Not only in youth, but then again with seniors too.
And I would say too is like, you know, the situations that you're probably most exposed to with youth that are in situations that they shouldn't be in is. There's also a connection to, unfortunately, that community that 100%, they're in, right?
There's a community.
And so they're like, well, I'm getting a connection there, and so why would I leave, right? And it's, I think it's our job, or it should be our purpose in life to give at least a chance for someone that's like, there's another way.
Neil Young with Youth Impact was saying, because we're saying we want them to be involved in activities, and he says, well, some are. He said, what we need to think about is constructive use of time.
100%.
Because some are in destructive use of time to themselves sometimes and others, right? But you are right. There's still a community. Like the ones that came out of being unhoused, they had a community, and they still need that. And like I say, and we all need it. That's not something that we're trying to get for others. We all need connectedness and 100%. Belonging, right? That's
you can't just pull them out and be like, okay, we're just going to put you in a house and then you're going to be good, right? And then you come back and you're like, why aren't you good yet? It's like,
well, they say with youth services too, it's not the number of services and programs they get, it's that if there's at least one of good quality, where they feel in that service that somebody cares about them, and if they feel somebody cares about them, it's more effective. It just, and it makes sense. Like with research backs it up. We know. Right? Somebody cares about me. I'm going to listen more carefully.
I agree.
And it's the caring, right? It's not. The care. I don't have the same background as you, so I can't relate. It's being interested in getting
curious,
attentive,
as a person. Hearing their stories, hearing about their dreams.
It sounds so simple, right? But I feel it's. But you know, we're, like I said, we're really happy to be involved in the way that we are. Now, one question that often comes to mind personally for me is how, because listen, I don't think that being in a nonprofit is an easy job to accept, because you know that it obviously comes with the challenges. But also I feel like, you know, the looking at it from the outside and having not been in a position, it is one where you have to ask a lot, right? You're always asking, can you provide us with help? Can you provide us with volunteers? Can you provide us with money? Right? That's part of the goal of making the organization function.
Right.
Why did you choose to do that? What
on a personal level?
Yeah, like what motivated? Because that's really like I am really impressed by when people say like, listen, I'm in this because of reason X, Y, Z, and I've been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years because I'm like, that's really impressive and congratulations, right?
Well, I would say there's a couple pieces of that of why. One is the flexibility that we have in the community sector, because like we're able to be a little more nimble.
Okay.
And I say that, like, we work with a lot of partners, and especially with government, and sometimes their hands are tied.
Right.
The will is there. They want to do this. They want to be able to do that. But wait, we have to first pass that through Fredericton, or if it's larger ones, we have to pass that through Ottawa. So it's not a matter of will. Whereas in the community sector, we're able to go, well, that's not working.
Okay.
Let's stop doing that.
Okay.
And let's do this instead.
Okay.
Or to do that. So that's one. And then that flexibility is we're also able to work with the various partners, because we have a different relationship with government than some of the other community sector ones, because they run amazing campaigns for us, but we're not always as dependency on their funding, although they're amazing funders as well. So we're able to be in conversations with them in a different way. We have all of these amazing companies who do campaigns for us, with whom we have a relationship that we're able to go, okay, this is great. We've got that sector that we can talk to and engage them and their volunteering and their resources. And then we do have the community sector partners that we work with. So I think we're in a very privileged position. It matches well for me as a high extrovert, because it's basically, what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing? And then the other piece that I would say that inspired me, and you'll see it reflected in why, when I first got hired, there was a colleague that at the time was a year in already, and I remember saying, I want to work with that person, and I want to work for Debbie.
Okay.
And the reason was, the organization I was working in was in the faith community at the time, wonderful experience, but sometimes it worked at the speed of backwards, because there was no urgency. There was like, let's, we can discern, we can pray on this, and we can see how this will go. We can just, and the urgency. Like the reason that we can feel fine going and saying, can you also help? Can you also play a part? Is because of the urgency of it. I'm not satisfied with it being the way it is. And that, I can say, it was modeled by Debbie, and that it's about the community. And so I think that's probably what drives me in terms of that being inspiring and wanting to do that, so that it's easier for us to go. What I would say is gratifying is that has being in this field now for a long time and working with a lot of people, and including in government circles and companies, is that we've earned some credibility and trust. So that now when we go to ask, sometimes we're not even going to ask. Sometimes they're coming to us and saying, would you guys consider doing this? Debbie was asked to take over an organization to help stabilize them. Okay. In her spare time. But it was based on...
Does she have any?
No.
Sunday.
No, she's on vacation. I got a text from her today. But it was based on, okay, yeah, but you deliver.
Yeah.
Right.
And so now, instead of us sometimes having to go and ask, they're coming to us and saying, could you do, how else can we do this? Who can we talk to? How we can do? So, whereas when we first began, one of my colleagues at the time says, we were just starting. We would go to an envelope opening, like, what are you doing? What's happening here? But we've been in some of this work a while, and we know a lot of our partners, and we know who to bring into that, to attract to it. I would even say, instead of just asking for help, my goal, is that United Way becomes something that it attracts people to it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not us just having to go do it. It's more like, what's going on over there? Who you guys work with? That's attractive. That it's attractive for people to get involved and know that we're going to make a difference, and that they feel the urgency, because there is. There's, these are stubborn issues. They're complex. These are people's lives that we're working with, but that they're like, I like how we're doing this, and I like who we're doing this with.
Yeah.
I would argue and say that you're probably close to being where you want to be as your goal, right?
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to attract more and more.
I think a lot of people would say that, anything that when the name United Way comes up, they're excited or they're curious about, what are they doing next, right? And
I think the more we've been able to talk about what we do, like you had begun the conversation with, is like sometimes people don't know what we do. Yeah. The more that people do know the work we're doing and why we're doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what were you going to say?
For me, I think I have two very distinct values. One is that as a human being, I feel we have a responsibility to contribute to wherever you call home. This isn't my first home. No. I come from overseas. But this is where I work and live, and I have a responsibility as a human being.
Right.
The second is I'm not allowed to complain if I don't do something about it.
I like that rule.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So this is me doing something about it.
Yeah.
But I also think it's a calling because I've tried teaching in middle school and high school, and it was not for me. I really like working with youth, but teaching, I don't have the patience for it. Yeah. But the agility speaks really well to my lack of patience. It's fast paced.
Yeah.
We joke every day that we're building the ship. We don't know what the ship is. We don't know if it's a canoe, if it's a cruise ship. We're building it.
A plane in the air.
It could be a plane in the air. But we're building it. It's changing. It's evolving. We're working. We're filling the gaps. I like that.
Yeah.
From a professional perspective, as a high extrovert, I love the people we work with.
Oh.
When we say we work with people who care, I mean that. Because if you don't care, you're not working with a nonprofit.
No.
You just won't. If you're not philanthropic somewhere in your bones,
you won't last.
But even from a business relationship, like it's not going to.
No.
You're not going to engage with me. You're not going to connect with me. We're not going to build anything.
Yeah.
But the variety of the work we get to do is really cool. The things that it's almost like a startup feel. Where you're wearing many hats, you're touching on different things, and the hats you're wearing are changing. Today it looks like a toupee. Tomorrow it looks like you're going to lawn bowling or something.
We had the student hired, and we're saying, first thing they're on an Excel doing this kind of work, and then the next day you're coming with me. We're going to be moving wood. Okay, is this part of the job description? It's part of all of our job descriptions.
Oh yeah.
It's
I joked actually with my colleague Beth Crawford because she was a loan rep. So RBC lent her to us for the campaign season, and the first thing I needed her to do was paint numbers on cardboard because that was part of our campaign goal reveal. And I literally said to her, it's arts and crafts, you're saving lives.
Nice. Yeah. Good sell.
Yeah.
But I mean, now she's part of the team, and she's literally saying those words to colleagues. But today it's arts and crafts. Tomorrow it's building business proposals. And then it's literally we need to deliver food. So,
and what has changed, like I say, I'm now in 18th year, is there's so many more people now that share this kind of vision.
Right.
That has, when we first began, it was talking about, like, what does, with collective impact mean? And what do you mean? Why do we have to collaborate? What is it and all that? And, we like competition when it's people raising funds for us. We love that. That's great competition. But the number of organizations, individuals, people, government, companies, and that share that vision. And like I said, the only caution I have is we need to even now under more intense challenges, lean even more into one another. Not because we know the temptation is for people to see it from a scarcity model. That, oh my gosh, things are costing out. We're this and this and that. Well, then I just have to protect my own. We know that, but you got to be generous.
Do you find how long have you been with United Way?
This is my 18th year.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Well, that's what
I don't have to wear red because I bleed it.
To think that people continue to do it and are having such an impact on our community in places where it's selfless work, right? To be there for that long, I'm like, you've done way more than I'll ever do in my life, right? So, but what I wanted to say with that is, have you found an employee that's maybe starting today versus one that started maybe 18 years ago, do you find that they come in now knowing what the mission is and knowing what the vision? Because I've started to understand more with experience and the role that I have now, which is more of a position where I have to lead people, is people will have less objections or less questions when they know what the common goal is. So you're able to lead and to ask someone to paint numbers, and they'll have a question about like, why are we painting numbers? But once you just say it in a certain way, they're like, the common goal, right? You find now today they're coming in and it's like...
part of it is about matching. I think part of it is when we say attracting, is people that are drawn to that work, right? Because I think all of us when we were younger, sometimes we thought, I want to do this.
Right.
That's not what I want to do when you get involved. One of the things that, we don't try to steal people from our companies that help us, but there's no doubt... Borrow that a significant number of people, we've had different people. Yes, that's right. Like you've had people when they come and they're a loan rep with us for a time.
Yeah, and they fall in love with the work.
They fall in love with the work, and they find out what's actually going on in the community because it's an insider's look kind of at it. The same thing for the volunteers, I would say, who are on our community investment committee. So the ones who make the recommendations about where the dollar should go. You're not going to find greater champions than them because they get to see all the needs that are out there, all the things that organizations are trying to do, all the resources we need to do it. And so they get to find out, I just had no concept that this was going on in our community.
And how hard it is to draw the line.
To say
where the hope ends.
Yeah. So I think it depends on if people are drawn to it, because sometimes people think this is the position for them, but then when you get into it, and we see that in interviews as well, on paper, this seems like a perfect match.
That's awesome,
But so I mean, I know like in one of your own colleagues in Build for the Future and stuff has said, look, we can, what is it, train? We can
hire for the soul, train for the role.
Train for the role.
Yes.
And there is an aspect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we call him all the time. We should give him royalties.
Yeah. But there is an aspect of that I want to say, like sometimes we have really new employees coming in right away and they're very young. They're saying, I want to have work-life balance.
Right.
And from me starting off, I'm going, okay, I want to know first you love the work.
Right.
Once I know you love the work, let's talk about work-life balance.
Yeah.
And the reason that probably I come from that perspective is, as I've described it, is we know the urgency.
Right.
But until you are immersed in it and start to see it and do it, like Mischka's had the benefit of being started with the marketing committee, then 211, then resource development, and there's future changes happening and things going on. So I mean, when people get to see all the things that are going on, and Debbie has the whole vision, the total picture,
20 years,
right? The total picture,
2 decades,
right? So, and they've seen how our partners have grown and changed. So I would say it depends, but it really is about attracting people to the work, because that's.
And real change, we were talking about this actually earlier today as well, that the real change requires all levels, right? But not all levels will speak to you.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're not, a lot of us on the United Way team are not frontline workers, right?
Right.
We're not the social workers who are literally taking families to resources or connecting them to services.
Right.
We're not helping a child who's been a victim of violence go through the justice process. Some of us are on the team, but not all of us.
Right.
So you really have like differing levels of grassroots community work. You can have organizational change, you can have systems, you can have policy, change is required at every level.
Yeah.
What level speaks to you? Because we need you there.
We need all those skills. Like I think people sometimes think, I just want to give back, and so I want to join a nonprofit. We're like, well, what skills do you have to bring to the cause right now?
Yeah, right.
We need certain particular skills, and sometimes we're lacking some, and we're like, that's what we're looking for, right? And as always, when we know Debbie in January 2026 is retiring, that's a lot that goes out the door. That's a lot of knowledge.
Isn't like the announcement on here.
No,
officially.
it's not. She has shared before.
None of us believe her. None of us want to believe her.
Yeah,
that's the.
And so a lot of knowledge goes out that door. And what we know is, okay, that's going to take a number of other different people, but we're also going to need to have people coming in with the skills and stuff we need at this time as well. And as our community changes and as our community grows, right? Our United Way continues to expand and grow.
What have you found, like in the recent years, have been like skills gaps that you've had with like the growing number of maybe the population or the issues or anything that pops up to mind that you're like, oh, because we're expanding so much, or there's a need for expansion, anything comes to mind?
I can only speak. So I've been with United Way formally for 4 years, and I can only speak to that. But that modern adaptability, social media is constantly changing.
Right. Yeah, right. I would think.
Those tools are constantly changing. You now have AI.
Right.
How do you ethically use it as a productivity tool? And understand the security behind it? Like whatever you're inputting, is it putting your relationships, your information at risk?
Right.
So that whole digital side and being adaptable to the changes and being adaptable to learning in the fundraising, community engagement, marketing, all of that piece.
It was a big focus at our just last national conference. So that's across the movement. It's something that we share in terms of, okay, we know this is a piece for us.
Yeah.
I would think that. And the other piece, it sounds less complex, but has been, and we're getting better at it, is being able to tell the story.
Right.
Because sometimes, because I'm in the community development side, and we can nerd out talking about principles, focus evaluation, and transformative evaluation, and effectiveness principles, but the reason we're into that is because it's complex to make that what seems like a simple change, and so being able to tell that story simply. So that people can enter that conversation, because we're not trying to use language to exclude them from that conversation. We're just trying to grasp like how stubborn some of these things are, how complicated they are and stuff. So being able to tell that story has been something that we're now growing better at. We didn't used to be.
Right.
We could talk. I remember one of my colleagues who were talking away, and they're going, "I don't really understand, but I know you're passionate, and I'm excited by it." It's why I can't be a teacher, and whereas one of my brothers can. I said, if I had to explain a card game to someone, I would be telling them and stuff, and by the time we finish, they could be like inspired. Let's go, but they still might not know the rules of the game. Right. Whereas my brother can, in 7 sentences, go, here's what it's about, here's what we're doing,
this is how we're playing,
and this is how we're doing it, right? And I'll give you an example. Lately, we work with someone who that's his role. He's an evaluator, and we were working with one of our agencies, and we were talking about how we're going to change our partnership a bit. There's going to be a lot more accountability, and we're going to do more together and all that. So how does he say that? He goes, we're going to be up in one another's business. Right? Really? And I thought, and I said, that's better than saying we're going to have a lot more accountability in terms of sharing and that. Like, it's just, we got to, it's,
I don't know. I feel like some HR departments would question that.
I know. Whatever.
Because it's both what you said. It seems simple, and at the heart of it, at its core values, at its core thing we're trying to do, like U-Turns has never changed from its core thing, which was to connect them to some positive, caring, supportive relationships. That's at the core.
Yeah.
But to do it is very complex and takes a lot of work. So I think that's a piece. We want to be able to make this so people can enter that conversation, and feel like they have a role they can play within that, not just, oh, you guys are doing great work. No, we need you to. Like, we need you involved.
And listen, obviously, I'm saying that if you want to start off with doing volunteering, a great place to start is anything that United Way is doing, but really try it. And I think that's just getting the taste of it is enough to know, oh, okay, this matters. This is going to make a difference, right?
Oh yeah. And people think that you have to give a lot to make a change.
Well, time and effort is enough.
Time and effort, but $5 a pay to United Way gets stretched because of the community fund to making sure that 5 seniors remain independent in the community.
Right.
That's the power of compounding collective effort. Right? Like, it doesn't require a lot.
No.
It could be a day cooking. It could be $5 a pay. Like, whatever it is that you can do, it compounds, it multiplies.
Yeah, because we have some volunteers that are looking for regular, weekly kinds of things, but we have others that are saying, if you need help sometime, once or twice a year or something, let me know. Like, we had ones asking, where are we the ones doing the volunteers for the YQM concert? I'm like, not this time. But they're they're always ready. They're like, anytime you need help, let us know. Right?
We literally supplied all the volunteers for the beer tent at the Guns N' Roses concert.
No,
did you know
that's
that?
true. Yeah. I think so.
Did you not notice these handsome faces? Like, come on.
And that was not as hard a one for us to get volunteers for.
No, I would imagine so.
So when we say varied work, front row seats to Guns N' Roses.
Why not? Right?
Could be on the table.
Yeah. But I think it's great. I think the first thing that anyone thinks of when they think of donating is money. Mm-hmm. But the true end to doing it long term, I think, is participation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
right?
sure.
Absolutely.
And as soon as you do,
that's when you live and breathe it.
Yeah. And I think it because it also makes it so easy to understand that so little does so much for people that. Like I shared it on another podcast because we were talking about with Atlantic Wellness, and I was saying listen, I've struggled with mental health and I continue to seek help and things like that because I think it's part of personal development, but I didn't come from a difficult childhood. And so in a situation where you haven't lived that, it is difficult until you do it to understand how really difficult it can be, but also until you participate, you don't understand how easy it can be to actually change it for someone else that isn't in that right situation, right?
But also it's an investment. So just like you learn about savings and budgeting and, contributing to your RSP or managing your food budget, you're learning about community investment, right? And what speaks to you, what matters to you, how are you personally helping to move the needle in ways that matter to you?
And it's an odd paradox that we've done such a better job around mental health and have taken some of the stigma away, and for people to know that this is, we all are trying to work on our positive mental health. One of the unintended consequences is that now sometimes, for instance, we have some volunteers or they don't want to volunteer working with young people because well, what if they have an issue? I'm not trained, I'm not a professional. And we're saying, so there's an over-professionalization. We're saying, or they just broke up with their partner, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, and would you listen to them? And so part of it is people are almost scared to get involved because they're going, well, I'm not a professional, I'm not an expert, I'm not a this. And we're going,
you're a professional human.
They're a professional human. Growing up, I didn't need necessarily that. We do need those, and we need those services available, but I didn't need that. I needed an older teen maybe that was caring about me, the cool one to hang out with. I needed somebody just to care. So I think that's another thing we're saying to people is it's not always a program even. It's just making yourself a bit vulnerable and learning and knowing that you don't have to be a professional in a lot of these roles. You just need to be a caring person.
Yeah. And when you think about your own life, some of the greatest champions that you had personally that contributed to who you are today were not professionals. It was maybe a coach. It was a teacher. It wasn't someone who had 5 PhDs on addiction theory.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's just these genuine people that you connected with, who cared about you, who took an interest, and who cheered you on.
So participation gets to be the key again, right? And then I think people are forgetting how powerful that is. Just, there was years ago where there was a campaign to just smile and say hi. And that was because Moncton was known as, there was somebody had written about, we're so friendly. I'm going, comparatively, where we were in the driveway, we're like, hi. But we weren't inviting them into coffee. That was a piece that people had noted, whereas, you go to Newfoundland, it's freaky friendly, Erwin Barker used to say, somebody says, how do I get here? Get in the car, It's And so they were saying we should just have a campaign of smile and say hi, because it's profound, that impact. Right now, let's go further now. We've got a lot of people coming to our region. Let's see, how do we make sure we welcome them and that they feel a part of this community as well, right? And for those that are here, let's make sure if they're feeling not connected, disconnected. And so I think participation is such a key thing. You're naming the simple things that sometimes take a bit complex things in order for us to do it intentionally. Right?
Well, it takes big organizations like you or people to invest in these organizations to give you the opportunities to broadcast that out, to know there is opportunity to do something. So I find a lot of times people can make it really easy for themselves to be like, I didn't know this existed, or I don't know how to really participate. It's I feel more and more we're starting to see there's a lot of opportunity, but it has to continue to grow that way, right? Because without those opportunities, or at least the situations where it can be like, hey, I can volunteer for this, or I can go to this event and it's for a great cause and all that. There's no way to have any positive impact, right?
Well, flipping the table then. So your incredible financial contributions aside, why do you keep showing up to the barbecues for the youth?
For me personally, it was, like I say, it's like, as soon as I stepped foot into a situation where I saw that just showing up was enough, that's where it was like, I'd be stupid not to continue to do this, because it only requires for me to show up and be myself. And I think that that's like something that, you know, again, I didn't come from a situation of being in a disadvantaged position. I've been lucky enough to have a life where, you know, I've had opportunities, but I feel as though I still probably struggle with a lot of things that kids struggle with in general. And it's who should I be? What should I listen? What should I do? And those are just part of growing up. And part of maturing, and hopefully at this point I can say I'm matured. I'm sure there's people that will argue that I haven't.
They're not on this podcast.
Do you get a comment section on the podcast?
But part of maturing is realizing that the experience that you have is also an opportunity to then go into other people's lives and be like, hey, I can speed up this process for you to understand those things by just saying, I understand where you are, and I'm here to listen to what you're going through. And I can give you advice. And just that's enough. And so to your question is, that's why I go. Because it gives me an opportunity that maybe no kid will talk to me at that situation, but if I don't show up, the chance is zero. If I show up, the chance, it could still be zero. But it could also be all the kids that are there. Right? So that makes a really big difference to me, and hopefully it makes a difference to them, right? And I think you said it does, right?
I think it really, really does.
We do.
We hear all the time from Youth Quest that they ask about you. When are the Build for the Future entrepreneurs coming? Will we see them again? What are you guys going to cook for them? I think they're quite impressed seeing all of these men cooking these elaborate meals. But to be fair, I also have fun. I don't think it was you. It was you, Paul, and who else? So I was like, you guys are engineers. You can engineer cannelloni from scratch. So
Wow.
I was literally like, so we got lasagna sheets and everything. I'm like, here you go, have fun. You had to slice it, roll it, build it.
Yes, I was there. I was there for that one.
Yes.
Well, it's funny too, like when you say when we underestimate the impact it has, and here's the other piece too is, I mean, we talk a lot about youth and that's a big focus of the Build for the Future ones as well, is that young people that are watching, like our impact is not neutral.
No.
Like they're watching us as adults. And so it'll be either negative or positive. And ignoring them is going to be negative. So that's why the showing up, the just making the effort, to them is, it might just, like you say, we might feel that it's not that great a big thing to do, but they're watching.
Oh my God.
They are so watching, and they may not look like they're watching, and their behaviors might not even always show that they're listening and watching. They are watching us.
They are.
It's never neutral on impact, right?
Yeah. And like how you started thanking us, I also want to give kudos to you and the Build for the Future group. I mean, this is pretty revolutionary for the construction industry, especially in Atlantic Canada, I would say. But it's 10 companies that came together and said, we want to make a difference. And you immediately understood collective impact. Right? So it's 10 companies contributing 10,000 each for 10 years for a total of $1 million. That's huge.
I know.
That is impact, and that is leadership. Right? You're doing the work. You are. You are. And that's the cool piece too. Like whoever you are, wherever you are, you can be the change. Exactly as you are, exactly where you are.
No. It's it's a pleasure for us to be able to do that, especially that, like I'd mentioned earlier in the podcast, is that we would often get a lot of requests, and at the end of the day, I think it's really important to look deeply at the opportunity that we have in terms of a business that already is about building the community to be like, okay, where if we do donations can it have the biggest impact for the collective, right? And this was a no-brainer to me. It's like, you know, if we can help at the earliest stages of life and the early development stages of where youth are maybe starting to make sense of themselves, but they're also still very young and naive, but then they have an opportunity to have, you know, the organizations that you guys support that are now funded to be able to bring on more staffs, have better facility, better resources, and be able to help more. That gives them more opportunity, and then their, you know, the child that might come from them to be in that family might be now coming into a better family.
And for them to be exposed to all the opportunities within the construction industry and all of that. Like that, we see more possibilities around that, like with, like when this hub gets going and other opportunities, like we see other things we're going to be able to potentially do with this partnership, you know, because that's a key piece, you know, that, like we know we went to MBCC, they helped do the cutting for all the wood for us, for Day of Caring, and because we got it in early enough, they actually had their students do it. But we were talking to them and they're saying they don't have enough still, right, coming through. Like they're like, there's a gap here. It's not just that we need more nurses, there's not just that we need more, and so we need to expose young people to all the opportunities right here in our region. You know, we're fiercely local, but to be that they can make a great life here and make an impact and build, you know, a future.
It's funny, actually, one of the latest podcasts we've done with Fundy Pros, they were saying like one of the cool parts that's often overlooked of what they're seeing in the organization, because we had their director of HR that was on, and she was saying that one of the cool stories that you get from the employees is when they go to a place that they've helped build and they can tell their kids like, this is what daddy did and this is what, and that's a cool story that sometimes you think, oh shit, like, okay, that's a cool part of working in the construction industry that goes far beyond just, it helps me pay the bills and all that stuff.
And it's that difference, right? Of building a house versus building a home.
Right.
Yeah. I can't make that claim.
I can't either.
I'm building a closet.
I've built a kitchen. I built a kitchen.
It's taken me half a year almost, but I'm building a closet.
There you go.
I can just put your effort in so many places.
You are building a closet.
The most decidedly unhandy one.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen Fuck This House?
No.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. It's all about DIY ownership.
Okay.
You're going to cringe. But it's DIY owners.
I do have supervision. I will say I have supervision.
Every episode's fantastic. Yeah. So he's like built a fence himself. Yeah. And he's like, is it skewed? Yes, but I intend it to be that way. And if you look over it, is it wonky and suspect? Yeah, but that's okay. And if you turn around, here's the gutter. Is it too long? Yes. Is it now my new flutter of the house? Exactly. You'd be stressing, but I'm excited because now I have a new project. It's so funny. It's so good.
Oh my god.
So good.
Now, if I were to ask you, like, in this past year, what would you say was, maybe it's between both of you or maybe it's individually, what would you say has been like the brightest moment or the success story that you're most proud of in terms of what you've been doing?
I mean, I have to say, I would dare say, because of what it represents, us finally being able to confirm that to be the lead agency on this hub.
Okay.
The only reason being because it's the culmination of years of building trusts, of working with partners, of the impact our partners have had on the ground, there's just something, it's like, because it's going to step another level now. It's like you do this work, and then you feel like, okay, now we're into another stage here, folks. I mean, Mischka didn't get to share in as much of that, but I would dare say organizationally, it's been that building up that, although it did, because it's also our telling their stories. It's also, we have so many different funders within it, including ourselves. So it's also our own resource development. Yeah. It's our impact stories. But it just represents, I think, a milestone moment for us. That, okay, they see that it's better for them to have them do this with an organization that is working with a bunch of partners.
Right.
Rather than saying, let's give this to one agency.
Yeah.
They said, let's continue to build on this amazing work that we're doing together. So this, in my mind, this is like the physical manifestation of U-turns.
Right.
So I would dare say, and it's taken a long time
Yeah.
to get things confirmed, to get it in place, and for it to finally happen. I mean, we're transforming the building we're in.
Right.
Like that piece as well. Like it's an entire building that's going to be used.
It's like a huge milestone, right?
It's a milestone in terms of what it represents when I think of what it took to get us there. And there's a lot of pieces that it took to get us there.
Right.
And that's exciting about the future. So that's one of them. What would be for yourself? Because
I mean, it's hard to be like so philosophical in fundraising because every year you have a goal, and it's
I asked, therefore I am.
it's competitive. It's goal oriented, and it's every year, right?
Yeah.
It's chipping away until you hit that number, and then let's raise the bar. But I would say it's very separated, the resource development, the fundraising, from the funding and investment piece, and it needs to be. But I work with all of the funded agencies in a different capacity, right? So I listen to these very real stories of lives changed. I also listen to their fears of maybe not getting full funding. I can't disclose, hey, we're doing really well or we're doing really poorly. It's very emotional. No one warned me how emotional fundraising for a charity is.
I think I've seen you cry a couple times.
Oh my God,
too, right?
God. I cry all the time. Which is also why I don't think I'm cut out to be a frontline worker. Oh my God, I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
But like listening to the stories of people who've been through too much that you can't even imagine. It's hard. When you hear that these heroes, these local heroes in our community are really stressed about funding their critical programming, it's hard. And it's a roller coaster. You have, community investors who pull out sometimes at the last minute.
Right.
And you're like, how am I going to find 20 grand?
Yeah.
Right? And then you have these campaign miracles.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're doubling your corporate gift? And you're like, oh my God, we're going to hit goal. We're going to hit goal.
We're going to hit goal.
So it's like this.
Yeah.
But, we've just finished 3 campaigns. And what I can say is we are so connected as a community with the partners that we have. It's so deep rooted. The relationships are so strong and so beautiful and so passionate about community. And collectively, through the campaigns, the events, the sponsorships, the fundraising, the storytelling, we are building such exciting momentum that I'm really excited for the years to follow.
Yeah, it does feel like
the momentum is strong.
It does. It feels very much so that way.
Yeah.
Again, because there is no United Way without partners.
Right.
No.
You can technically we could exist as an organization and we could do some fundraising, but what United Way's core value and what we're trying to do in terms of the community and what we hope to and aspire to is attracting people to that vision too, and it doesn't function unless it is with others. So when we say United Way and we'll wear our red and my name tag, but again, it sounds sentimental, but it's like it's United Way is really is all those partners, all those community, every individual giving their time and energy, every organization doing it. That is United Way. That's the United Way, and there isn't anything apart from it, right?
Right.
And my first campaign was actually in 2021. So it was, I think 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty, but there's also a lot of generosity.
Right.
We were like, holy crap, people have lost their jobs. I have my job. I feel really grateful. I'm going to give money.
Right.
We saw huge acts of generosity across the board. 2021, people still don't have jobs.
And they're still,
right? Are people still going to give? We don't know.
Right.
Do people still have money to give?
Yeah.
Or are you scared that you're next on the cutting block?
Right.
But we hit goal.
No way.
And we've raised more money every year, despite inflation, despite the cost of rent, despite the cost of living, the cost of food, all of the uncertainty that we've been living, the looming recession. Oh my God, if I hear about the recession one more time, I'm like, yes, we know. We know.
But it also speaks volume to
people pledge into doing it, but they expect results, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not blindly giving money and then, hopefully we made a difference, tap on my shoulder, it's done. Like, you are informing us of what changes are made. Like, every time that we come to these, the breakfasts, and this is just, I'm just thinking of our little situation that we're involved with, but you do a really good job at informing us and being like, hey, here are the tangible results, here are the lives you change, we hear the stories, we hear the impact. That's
we're outcome driven.
Yeah,
right. Like, that is the piece. Like, that won't change. We expect a lot of our agencies as well in terms of their reporting, and we were outcome driven to know for a few reasons. One, we want to know if it's making a difference ourselves, if the work we're doing is having an impact. And again, in the community sector, if it's not, we can make changes. We're outcome driven too in terms of, well, everyone is giving us those dollars. We need to be able to assure them that this is making a difference as well. And now we've also helped them to explain, now some outcomes, it's going to take longer. Some of the signs is dealing with generational issues, and that stuff is longer and complex, and that's what I meant by you got to be in the long haul. But you're right, like that. We take great pride in terms of our stewardship of the dollars, and it's something that accountability. Like, sometimes people say, I want to know where the dollar goes. Sometimes do you really? If you really did, you would probably give to United Way, because we are super transparent. Everything has to be online. It's so we take that seriously.
We never take it lightly, and we never take it for granted. That you choose to give your time, your hard-earned money, that you trust us. That trust.
And that trust is not then only in donors, because we have as much money that we draw in through partners and grants and foundations and that to do the work.
Right.
That's, so we double, that's the stretching the dollars, is the dollars that someone gives, we're out there getting, the apartments, buildings and stuff we do, none of that is coming out of our campaign dollars.
Okay. Most of our programming doesn't come out of the United Way Community Fund.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like that housing and stuff, that is coming from social development and from other partners.
Right.
From Reaching Home. The Seniors Meal Program, that's funding that we get from as well. So that's where we stretch dollars, and that's why we say it's a good investment with us, because we're going to stretch it. We're going to draw and hopefully attract. More to the shared, like we know we're not the only ones who have a vision of wanting to improve the community. It's not just like United Way, but I think we've done a good job of articulating of how can we do that together, though, across government, corporate, and community. How can we, and as individuals, I think that's probably the unique role that we can play, and the flexible role. We can change our role in a committee. We can start it up. And if someone else, we go, are you able to take the lead on that? We can step back again as well. So there's a lot of flexibility involved, and that's why we get to do new stuff sometimes. Like get new things.
Yeah, it's good to see that at least you've got like a perspective where it's like, it's about the community, it's not about the organization. I mean, that's, you obviously are doing things in order to help the organization succeed, but it doesn't succeed without the community, right?
Now, David would remind us, none of it happens with fairy dust. Like every school would love to have a U-turn coordinator. We're like, absolutely, but we can only expand as we have capacity. As to do this well, because that's how you do it in a sustainable way. That's how you do it with a quality, and it's always we still also need the dollars.
Now, I usually finish with one final question. I think it applies really well to this, and it's one that our hopes is that as this podcast continues to grow, that it inspires youth, and as we're talking about disadvantaged youth, it inspires them to, to maybe hear something that they needed to hear to choose the right career path, or they hear the advice that has, course corrected them and helped them, to achieve the, they'll look back and be like, hey, I saw this guy on the Here's How podcast, and that was the moment, right? And the question is pretty simple. It's basically like, if you were to be able to be in front of your younger self and give them a piece of advice, what would you tell them?
It's just so wild, because Canada was never on the table.
United Way was not on the table.
I didn't even know what United Way was. No. I was just a little girl in Johannesburg living her best life. I think for me, it's just like you, and this doesn't apply to all personalities, but you can plan and you can strategize, but you have to do. So don't be scared. Just take a step.
Yeah.
And then take another one.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for the journey that I've had. You know, I was studying languages, and my thesis supervisor told me about an opportunity to teach English in France. And I got to France, realized teaching's not for me, take another step. Ended up in Canada. You know, took another step, was in a ICT job fair. I'd studied translation. And met someone who thought I was funny. And then offered me a job. And then an entrepreneur who I was working with said, hey, do you have any plans for lunch? Come with me. Literally took me into a marketing committee meeting for United Way. And so, I mean, okay, do you want to know something? If you care, if you think, oh my gosh, woo woo, if you believe in the woo. Okay, 211.
Okay.
My birthday is the 2nd of November.
Okay.
211. You know, so like I just
It's
meant to be.
was.
it just
meant to
don't
be. That's true,
worry, just keep taking the step.
It's like Back to the Future. It's your density, destiny.
But it's true though. I mean, it's like, you know, I think a lot of us get caught into like this situation where, you know, climbing up the top of the mountain is like you're just looking at the top of the mountain, but you forget that like that journey is really that's the whole thing.
And it's part of the joy, and you know, just do good work.
Yeah.
Whichever direction you go, take a step, and there's no end to choices. You just keep making choices, and you can make different choices. But make a choice, take a step, do good work.
You get very little regret out of things that you try, and the reason why I say that is because you often don't get regret, you get experience. And you don't, without trying something, get that experience. And in that sense, it doesn't allow you to know if decisions can be right or wrong going forward.
It's true.
Right? So.
And my life motto is stories for the grandkids. I don't have kids, so I don't know if grandkids are coming. But
Well, there's a lot of grandparents that said that if they'd known how enjoyable it was, they would have had grandkids first.
oh, there you go, there you go. But it's like having that life of stories, you know, of the things you've tried and the things you've done and the places you've gone.
Yeah.
It's the stories.
What about you, Paul?
I was thinking about that, and I think if I were to see my younger person, I would say, if I had to say it simply, the answer is yes. That unless this hurts someone, yourself, or is illegal, because I think I just didn't take those risks, didn't do those pieces as much as easily early on. You know, as I got older, started to, I think I'd like to start much quicker and say, well, the answer is yes. Like, you know, I love the movie Yes Man with what's his name there, Jim Carrey in that. I mean, it's, you know, the exaggerated, but I think that, and I also want to be the answer when we ask for people for funding, is that, you know, so the answer is yes. You know, as well. But I really think there's an awful lot with that. That I think it's looking at life more from strength than it is from scarcity. You know, that's actually, I was thinking, you know, I was only into my 50s that I got my first tattoo, you know, and they go, so what is that? And I said, even then it's not badass. It's the wave particle theory of light.
Okay, cool.
But the notion is, if you view, they said, is the essential matter of electrons, is it as a wave or as a particle? And what they found was, it depends how you look at it. And that if you looked at it through one slit, it behaved as a wave, or maybe it was a particle. And if you looked through two slits, it was this. And so what I thought, when we look at strength-based, we said, if you look at people as strengths, you're not looking at them with rose-colored glasses. You're actually impacting the way they will behave. They will react as strengths. But if we look only at the world as problems, then that's how it will react and behave.
It's true,
And so I think that one, those really goes in, that's the more theoretical one. The other one's just say yes. The answer is yes. Let's do this. Let's experience life. Let's care for one another. Let's get involved. Let's respond to it. Right?
And to that point, I mean, the yes is a big part of showing up, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, you take that opportunity, it might, the worst thing that can happen, I mean, there's a lot of worse things, but not to make it too dramatic, but the worst thing you can happen is that you've experienced it and you're like, hey, whatever, it's not for me.
Right.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. This makes me think about 2-on-1.
Yeah.
Debbie literally offered me the gig, explained to me what 2-on-1 is, and I was like, okay, I got to be part of history. Like, what? 2-on-1? I get to launch it and be part of something, right? Yes. 6-month contract in the middle of COVID, where everyone is losing their jobs. You want me to leave a permanent, cushy position? Or is it? Okay.
And you said yes.
I said yes.
Yes.
But I first got my friend, because I didn't know how EI works. Like, I didn't know if I'm like putting myself at risk, because maybe phone calls are recorded. Right. So I got a friend to call to make sure I'd qualify for EI. And then I called Davey. I was like, I'll do it.
Oh my God.
I didn't know that. And now that's recorded. That's great.
Sent to CI. Well, to both of you, thank you very much. No. I think that, these conversations, we hope that that the listeners, it will inspire them to say yes to an opportunity or to think more attentively about where their dollar might be, those extra little dollars that they can spend it somewhere where it could have an impact, or that they just simply show up to a volunteer opportunity. Right?
Yeah,
that's you're
awesome.
Welcome.
Yeah, no, you're very
always welcome at United Way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, John. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is great.